Imagine looking in a mirror and it drops and shatters into thousands of pieces. If you're careful, you can reassemble it, but now it's fractured. This is what it is to be an Iraqi today. Our film takes place in Baghdad during the last week of 2006, a time of extreme, unpredictable violence. It starts with a murder, ends with a birth. Every night there's a curfew, and every dawn it lifts. And within this rhythm, people have to try to live their everyday lives. It was very good to actually finally, as it were, get off the page and into the real flesh and bones and blood, as it were, of making the film. Trying to actually translate a scene that I'd imagined in my head onto the screen. It's a very different thing because you write a script in one way to kind of evoke the film on the page to people who are not seeing it. And then it's quite a different thing to actually shoot that scene. So doing these scenes in Kuwait was great for that. I mean, it was a huge learning experience for me, and a very good way to sort of test the kind of visual strategies and what we were trying to do with them, and the kind of lighting and how a crew would work together and so forth.
You know, it's a real privilege to have everybody kind of coming together and working on this thing. Films are not easy to make, and they're even harder to make here, but you know, we're going to try to do it as best we can.
I was really drawn when Talal said that he is using this as a test to the industry here to see if it's possible to, if Kuwait has what it takes to bring in, you know, films here.
Kuwait is a country that doesn't have a film infrastructure. There's a lot of television that happens there, and a lot of television soap operas and series and serials and stuff, but it's quite different from shooting cinema.
There's a certain system in Kuwait where it is kind of set by the TV shows, and it's a bit hard to break the industry out of that system. They feel a bit like it's a bit hard for them to function outside of that system.
Kuwait doesn't have a cinema industry, but it has a TV industry, so there's plenty of crew that you can find here to work on projects like this. Kuwait also has some areas that could look like they were Baghdad, and so the director thought that it might work well for this video pilot to do the shooting here.
This pilot was a collection of test scenes, really, from the film, to try out some strategies for the film, to try out some of the actors, to try to put the production together and to see how that worked. So for all of us working on it, it was a kind of a learning experience and an experiment.
The film brings together the stories of several different characters, but the stories are interconnected because of the place, which is basically one particular neighborhood in Baghdad. So it's not just telling the story of one main character, as many other films might do, but telling the story of the community.
You can tell stories in different kinds of ways, because sometimes, certainly I found myself in a situation where people say to me, no, but you've got to have this. You've got to have that, you've got to have this act 1, act 2, blah, blah, blah. You've got to have a kind of narrative structure, which is like a story, which I don't actually agree with all the time. I think you have to have a narrative, but I don't think you have to necessarily have a story as such. And I think that sometimes there's a very narrow view, a kind of orthodoxy about stories can only be told this way, but actually stories come out of all different traditions and ways of thinking and things like that. And I think this film, part of its difficulty in raising money is that it isn't that orthodox structure.
Hello, Mama.
At least I can sort of just sit here outside the thing and talk to him. But I don't know. I don't think so. Hang on a sec. Oh no, it is open. It is open. It's been going there. Fine, okay. My feeling in this film in particular is that everybody who appears in the film needs to feel like an individual character. I mean, each of us walking around the streets, I mean, if you think of sitting on top of the bus and looking at the people on the pavement, I mean, it's like a film passing, but each one of those people, you know, has got a story, and the way that they walk, or the way they talk to somebody else, or the way they've done their hair, or whatever, expresses that in some way or other. That's what I'm after in the film, is that everybody in it has a very particular feel to it, and that they're not just representatives of a particular point of view, or they're not just a passerby. If you know who you are, you know, you don't have to, you know, work in some kind of much more superficial way about how do I say the lines. You know, it comes up because you know who you are.
The way casting works in Kuwait is there aren't really any casting agencies. It's all by, you know, asking around, trying to find people. Usually actors know actors, so if you know a couple of actors, they'll direct you to other actors. It's much harder to make a film here than making it in the UK or in the States, because the industry here is based on TV series. The actors have a certain way of acting, and it's really hard to get them to do something else. But the good thing is that there are a lot of people who've never been in the industry, and if you're lucky enough to find them, it's always a nice surprise to see them, you know, doing something that you've never seen.
عيننا عيب شرعنا الله يستر من الميت اليوم جايين ورايا قلت فوت على الدرج فوت
There are Kuwaitis who have Iraqi backgrounds or can do Iraqi accents and so forth, and knew quite a lot about Iraq, and so that actually they could do those parts. And I found some really talented people I really liked, and who worked really well and were very open. We did a lot of improvisation and finding of characters and so forth, and that was great.
Some of the actors that Maysoon casted, they had very similar backstories to their roles. Me and Maysoon thought it was really interesting that those actors attracted similar experiences. And I've seen how Maysoon chooses different periods of the backstories that are crucial and turning points in that character's behavior in the movie. And she makes the actor live it. Like they have to act that scene that turned them to be who they are now.
It's very important to make these exercises because it's make you easy to play the character.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Hello, boss. Hello. مساعد مصور اللي هو مساعد ايثن مساعده فبدل بطاريات ركب ترايبود كاميرا وبس. That's it.
How are you feeling, Maysoon?
It's like a policeman, actually. It's like, go there. This is a scene that largely happens in this minibus right here, which is very small, and you like sardines in a tin in it, so shooting it is going to be a bit of a challenge. Shooting inside, it's a whole conversation that happens between people stuck in a traffic jam. So we're now creating a traffic jam here of cars that are of the right period. But we've actually managed to do it, actually, I think. So this is great. It feels like a traffic jam.
It's easier to film inside a house, indoors, but not outdoor. When we had this scene where we had to shoot the minibus, and I had to have a checkpoint, get all of these cars, there's kids playing, and we needed a gun. The director wanted a Kalashnikov. I finally figured out how I could get a Kalashnikov, but it wasn't a Kalashnikov. I found an M16, which is kind of a bit close to what they really want. So the M16 was a BB gun, actually. Because the location was outside in an area where a lot of expats were living. We had to be very careful with it.
Sometimes what's really, really energizing and really gives you joy is actually when you struggle to find a common language that you can speak about something, when a task that you're trying to work at together, and you're coming from different places, and you find that, and it's sort of beyond culture, and it's beyond language and all the rest of it, but you understand what you're doing. It's a huge thing. It's like you've knocked down a barrier of some sort. I like the idea of a mixed crew myself. It suits me because actually that's my comfort zone.
Working with a multinational group has its advantages and its disadvantages. It's definitely nice to know how people work, how they work differently, and after trying different things, what's the best way of doing things at this location, on this set, with the people there. But with that comes a lot of, miscommunication and different point of views and some clashes. But I mean, that's kind of normal, I think.
Because if you do that, then we don't see your legs. Because I could see your legs moving. Okay, I'll call cut. When I say cut, that means it's finished. I'll shout out it.
I mean, this film is for everybody. It's for audiences who are not Iraqi or have not lived in this kind of situation, to get a sort of sense of what it takes to live in this kind of situation, and how you resist, and what kind of humor you can make, and all of that, to sort of what life is actually like there. People sit in Europe, for example, and they watch war footage from wherever, Syria. But actually, what is life like day to day? And how do people find that kind of internal resistance in themselves to actually carry, not just resilience, but resistance, to actually do something, not just survive, but live.
هذا كله وين راح يودينا؟
And the film is also for people in Iraq and Syria and places like that are going through this as well, to have a sense of recognition of their lives on the screen.
I truly, truly, truly believe in the message of this film. Like the content of just the effect of politics on everyday life and people is what really drew me to being part of this film.